Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about KeyLit. Just a minute of housekeeping. If you have questions, we're going to try to save those for afterwards. Or if you want to put them in the chat, we'll circle back to them at the end. And also, my name's Jason Scott. I'm the KeyLit Specialist here at Prestwick House. And in a very real way, I'm also the same kind of surly teenager I was in classroom, kind of bored when somebody handed me a copy of Catcher in the Rye, and that voice J.D. Salinger created and Holden Caulfield really spoke to me, and it set me on my journey for becoming a reader. I went through, while still in high school, almost all of Kurt Vonnegut, and then in college, I fell in love with Hemingway and Fitzgerald and became an English major. And so, in discussing KeyLit and talking about teaching novels and using novels in the classroom, it's really something that is really important to me, and I felt like something I'm happy to be able to share with you what we've come up with today. We're going to talk about why KeyLit is the choices that we made, and why KeyLit is great for this kind of use. But first, just another discussion of why teaching whole novels we think is still important. If you know anything about Prestwick House, you know that we're really dedicated to English literature and supporting English teachers. And we think reading novels has a lot of built-in advantages. Reading whole books, we know that helps students focus, especially today when the focus has been kind of pared down. We think the discipline of reading whole books is still important. We know that it improves language skills. It's a challenge. Sometimes it's a challenge, but it's if somebody falls in love with the book, it's a challenge that they're eager to undertake. We know that reading whole books encourages critical thinking. It puts you in a position of thinking through seeing life through somebody else's eyes and making kinds of tough choices sometimes. And most importantly, reading whole books is fun. And while we know that reading whole novels, we say at Prestwick House, contains all the ELA disciplines, from vocabulary to grammar to rhetoric. As I mentioned, critical thinking. We think the novel is really the cornerstone of the English language arts classroom. And yet, reading full novels is happening less frequently, and it's being, in some ways, pared down to passages and that kind of thing. We want to, with KeyLit, make sure we can try to keep the novel at the center of the English language classroom. There's a lot of research on the topic that if you can turn a reluctant reader into a reader, a lot of good things happen. A lot of good things downstream happen, obviously academically, and we know all about that, but also a lot of research on how reading novels helps train people to be better citizens and better people. And we have that. If you want that research, we could share it with you. I don't want to get into the weeds of it now. So reading novels, we say, is good for people and society. And how does KeyLit do it? How does KeyLit help you get there? And the goals that we established for the program we're to make it interactive online, which it is. It's a web-based program, so there's nothing to download. It can meet your students where they live on their devices or in their Chromebook books, and be ready at a moment's notice for them. It does have that student focus and that classroom focus that we really try to put at the heart of all Prestwick House products. How helpful is it for the student? How helpful is it for the teacher? We really keep coming to it as a literature-based company. We wanted to keep that strong focus. And we wanted to we made it skills-based and standards-based. We know that that's important in today's classroom. We start with standards at the outset and make sure that we're it's not all just warm and fuzzy. We get some checking off some standards, bunch of standards as well. And although it's not a online quiz just to see if you read the book, there is an objective assessment, and we really want the goal of the program to result in students understanding what not only what happened in the book, but understanding the book itself. So there's an objective assessment at the end. And like I said before, also to help students fall in love with these books. I don't think anybody would give a 15-year-old a 15-year-old who's never seen a bicycle before and just say, here you go, have a nice time. There's a very slim chance that student would get on that bicycle and ride it, enjoy themselves. There may be sort of a rare individual that could kind of figure it out. But we feel similarly with novels and understanding long form fiction, there's a process to it, and we want to help you bring that to students so that they can not just understand and get by, but also enjoy reading in the future. So currently we have 16 titles. We've rolled out many of the key pieces of literature that are used in the English classroom to hopefully spark that love of literature. One of them is the Catcher in the Rye, as you can see there. Most recently, we've added Christmas Carol, and soon we'll be adding some short stories. But they all share the same goals and same basic structure. I'm going to talk about the structure a little bit. The unit organization and structure of it is each one is 5 to 10 text-based lessons, which amount to about 20 minutes of work after the reading assignment. So if your assignment is one chapter of The Great Gatsby, for example, then the student will have one lesson of about 20 minutes. And so it's organized around the reading assignment, which you could do in class or in the study section or at home even, followed by a summative assessment where which is an objective assessment to make sure that the students understood the nuts and bolts of what they read. And also we'll have 3 targeted skills addressed throughout the unit, which vary a little bit from novel to novel based on what kinds of things we thought need to be focused on. For example, is it characterization? Is it metaphor? We're also going to be introducing literary concepts as well, like allegory, for example. And then finally, we're going to finish with an unlocking meaning wrap-up lesson, which pulls it back from the specifics of what happened and really looking at in this final session what are the bigger points, what are the big picture items that we want to make sure we've gotten from reading this book. Each individual lesson then has its own goals, and they usually have they all have close reading and critical reading practice. It's again to assess the reading comprehension and make sure that the students are on track, and it's a way for you to keep in touch with whether the students are keeping up. Then we have questions that focus and follow the text, and questions that incorporate quotations and short passages. There's a lot of quotations and short passages that are dealt with in the program itself. The lessons also provide critical reading practice. Beyond just simply knowing who did what when, we want to make some critical reading and higher level thinking, such as inferences, interpretation, and analysis. And then the program also wants to provide instruction. So entering into that conversation with the student about the book and let the student know where their answers were accurate and where they might have had um, a different answer. Some of the questions then being sort of objective and some of them being subjective, where the student just answers based on, you know, what they thought, what they felt about the thing, rather than what actually happened. We also define, as I said, literary terms and techniques, and all those questions will be connected to anchor standards. So what I'd like to do now is turn over to my colleague, Keith Bergstrom, who's going to open up the program itself and just walk you through some of those things I was just discussing.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. And just as a quick way of introduction, my name is Keith Bergstrom. I'm president here at Prestwick House, and I've been involved with the production of this program since we got started. So what I'd like to do is just pull over a copy of our program here and show you what you see when you log in, explain a couple of the decisions that we made as we went along. So as you can see, once you get into the classroom, we have all of our books available. If you decide to use the program, you do have access to every single one of the books that we have created, and any new ones that we release will automatically be added to your classroom. Right here, we can see the 16 titles that we currently have available. We also have Heart of Darkness currently under production. And like Jason mentioned, we'll have our first short stories hopefully released over the course of the summer. I think we have some Poe coming up and Gift of the Magi. So what I do is, if you go ahead and select the program, we will hide any lessons that are not relevant for you, so your students don't have to pour through a million different books in here. They can just get right to the book they're looking for. I'm going to get started by giving you a little introduction to the structure. Like Jason mentioned, we do divide the books up generally by chapters, but if they're short chapters, they might get grouped together. You can see this particular book, Lord of the Flies, has 8 different lessons in it, and then it has a summative assessment and then unlocking meaning. After each lesson, there's a discussion prompt where your students can kind of chat amongst themselves and have some discussions about what they've read over the course of the lesson. So I'm going to dive into lesson 1 for Lord of the Flies, and we'll see what we do as we get started. So the first thing that your students encounter is the keys to the lesson. This is a summary of what they'll be learning. These are kind of the standards-based lessons, and they cover what your goals are over the course of this particular lesson. You can see we're starting off by taking a look at the setting, imagery, learning a little bit about the structure of the text. So every lesson follows a fairly similar format. We open up with a very low stakes activity. Really, we want students to be able to interact with the program. We know that students get very, very bored if you just drop big passages of instruction on them. So we try to open up with something that's fairly loose as a starting point. So we're starting off looking at characterization a lot in this first chapter. So we open up with a kind of a quote from Dostoevsky and ask your students to see whether that makes sense. So there is no right answer on this. This is just to get your students thinking about the major themes that we're covering over the course of the lesson. So you'll see every lesson after you answer questions, or maybe a series of questions, depending on whether they're following the same topic, is the basic structure gives a lot of the instruction in terms of feedback. So after you've answered the question, our feedback directly answers and expands upon the questions that we just looked at. And keep in mind sections point out what your students should be thinking about as they're reading the book. So a lot of the instruction takes place in the course of giving your students direct feedback for the lessons. So the first activity that your students will always encounter is a main event section. This is your reading check. It's a 6-part question. It's very short, but it gives you the chance to look and see which one of your students probably did their reading, because they're very simple plot-based events. So it covers a couple of different reasons. One, it works to see if your students know what they're reading. But it also then, in that feedback, gives you a summary of the chapter that comes ahead. So if your students didn't do their reading, they're not now left just kind of staring blankly at a computer screen, clicking randomly. They can get at least some value out of digging into the program and focusing on the text that's in here. It's not ideal, obviously, and they won't get the same benefit as if they actually read, but it does leave your students without being completely lost if they didn't do their homework here. So the bulk of the text then focuses on a variety of different short quotes that come from the text, and really focus your students on to go back and reread what they just read as their kind of reading passage, reading assignments. So here you see an introduction to Ralph in here. We see how does that character's background come in. A lot of, like this first chapter, like I mentioned, is focused on really doing characterization. So we're introduced to Ralph right off the bat, looking at the background here, focusing on things like words like fair that Golding uses to describe Ralph. So within here, you're really reading passages and paying attention. But as you get through here and you've learned a little bit about Ralph, our feedback focuses again on learning how and giving people that instruction after they've already interacted with you. So you're not left with lots of lecturing. It's really designed to be interactive and to work back and forth. So then we'll move on to Piggy, and we'll have a number of questions exploring Piggy before I think we move on to Jack, of course. So now we've been introduced to the first few characters. Now we're looking at the concept of leadership. We know that Jack and Ralph are both kind of two different forms of leadership. And in fact, Piggy is as well. And we explore that topic. These are really the big key ideas that you're learning and exploring over the course of the novel. Exploring the rest of the characters, I think we have a couple of moments on setting here at the end. That would be a different lesson here. And then at the end of the lesson, we're left with kind of a key takeaway. What are these big ideas that we're carrying through over the course of the lesson? So here we have a rising action, falling action plot chart, kind of introducing that concept as we explore the novel. So we know we're in the early exposition, and we'll be moving towards big climaxes as we move forward. So every chapter ends with the big takeaways. They introduce the literary devices that we've already encountered over the course of the lesson, introduction to the characters, and what are the big ideas moving forward. So that's kind of a quick introduction to the format and the destruction, or the format and structure of our goals within this lesson. You will see that once you're completed with the lesson, you also have access to a discussion board. This is designed for your students to come up with their own big questions and thoughts, and kind of explore things together as a group. So this takes it away from just being, let's work with multiple choice questions, let's work within the program. Students have to share their own ideas before they get to see their colleagues and their friends' activities. You can see all this as you go along, and you can control this discussion and really explore what are the big ideas. We do guide students with a couple of maybe some of the options of what they might be able to think about. But really, we want to open this up so that students are doing their own thinking as they move through the lesson. So as mentioned, we also have at the end of each lesson a summative assessment. I believe the summative assessments are generally locked, so your students can't get into these without when you're not ready. Otherwise, the students do have the ability to work kind of free form because they're supposed to be learning opportunities in here. We don't want to think of this as a big test every week or every lesson as you're going through here. There's one summative at the end. It has 15 plot level questions. That's kind of an understanding of what you're reading. And then it has 10 plot level questions, and then 5 questions organized around 3 key topics that we've explored throughout the lesson. So for example, in Lord of the Flies, we're probably addressing symbolism, characterization, and then maybe a topic like plot or plot structure, something along those lines. So every book will be a little bit different depending on what grade level and what topics are most relevant for that book. The unlocking meeting, as Jason mentioned, focuses on the kind of big topics. Like this is an allegorical lesson in here, so we're now stepping back and looking at the book as a whole. As you saw, we were really getting in the weeds and looking at specific quotes to analyze those programs. So that's the basic structure and the format as we move forward over the course of the book. You'll always have that same structure, which is very valuable for the students as they kind of work through a variety of books. Of course, every book is a little bit different. Some of the giant books like Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird will have kind of more chapters in one. Some of them will really be able to dial down, like of Mice and Men. Some of the reading assignments are very small. And then Shakespeare, of course, is a little bit of a different approach because Shakespeare is a little bit different. We have some lessons that are introductions to Shakespeare's language before we dive into the text. But in every lesson, you're going to start off with that open-ended or kind of easy introduction material, and then move forward into kind of deeper language analysis. So your students always have that same familiar structure to work through. So I think that's kind of what I was looking to share with you in this program. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them to Jason or me. I'm going to hand this back to him to talk a little bit, or do you want me to just continue to move forward, Jason? Okay. So just moving forward, give you kind of a little introduction to the way that we've set up pricing for this program. While we're still in kind of our introductory years, because this has only been available so far for this school year, and moving into next year will be the bigger rollout for everybody. We're leaving our introductory pricing in position, at least through anybody who orders this summer. So the program is built around a retail price of $19.99 per student, but you can get set up for $14.99 this year. And if you have larger schools and districts signing up for bigger groups, that price does decrease over time. We do have a minimum of 50 students for this because it is set up and designed for use in schools. So we can't set up and work with this program for individual kind of students at home. It's just not kind of built around that structure. So that's kind of the big questions in here. If you have any questions here at the end, please feel free to drop them in chat. I'll go ahead and answer anything that comes up. I don't see any questions in there right now. Or you can email Jason at Prestwick House. He'll be happy to set you up with a trial account so you can go in there, check out the program on your own, or answer your questions as you go through here. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join with me today. If you're viewing this later, please feel free to reach out with any questions that come up. We'll be posting this video up on YouTube for people to watch in the future. So if you're watching this in the future, welcome from the past. So hope you're having a great day today, and we look forward to working with you in the future.